The Thracians, an ancient civilization whose story is often overshadowed by the more famous Greeks and Romans, played a pivotal role in shaping the history of the Balkans and beyond. Who were the Thracians, and why do they remain largely forgotten in the annals of history? Nestled in the heart of Southeast Europe, the Thracians thrived in what is now Bulgaria, Greece, Turkey, and Romania. They were a people of warriors, mystics, and skilled artisans, known for their complex society and fierce independence. Despite their formidable presence, the Thracians didn't leave behind the same lasting monuments as the Egyptians or the Romans. Most of their history is preserved through the words of outsiders, like Greek and Roman writers who admired and feared them. However, what we know about the Thracians today is only a small part of their true genetic legacy. Modern science, especially the advancements in genetic research, is beginning to peel back the layers of their forgotten past. DNA analysis has become a tool that's helping us reconnect with the Thracians in a way that goes far beyond ancient ruins or historical texts. Today, we still see the echoes of the Thracians in the genes of modern populations across the Balkans. From the rugged mountains of Bulgaria to the fertile plains of Greece, the genetic imprint of the Thracians remains, a testament to their enduring influence. But how did these ancient people shape the genetic landscape of Europe? And why is their story, both historical and genetic, so often overlooked? Let's dive into the forgotten genetic history of the Thracians and explore how their legacy has been hidden in plain sight, waiting to be uncovered by science and archaeology. The Thracians were not a single unified empire, but rather a collection of tribes that shared common cultural and linguistic traits. At their peak, they controlled vast territories from the eastern Balkans to parts of Asia Minor. Thracian civilization flourished around 1000 BCE and lasted until the Roman conquest in the 1st century BCE. Despite the many tribes, the Thracians were known for their distinct way of life, which included sophisticated art, elaborate burial customs, and impressive military prowess. Thracian society was organized in a way that allowed them to thrive in a region marked by mountains, rivers, and forests. They were skilled farmers, hunters, and warriors. Their cities, such as Scythopolis, were centers of culture and political power. The Thracians also developed a rich mythology, with gods and heroes that rivaled those of Greek and Roman traditions. But what truly set them apart was their ability to integrate with the civilizations around them, from the Greeks to the Persians and Romans. Their strategic location, nestled between powerful empires and trade routes, allowed them to influence both Eastern and Western cultures. They were renowned for their artistry, producing intricate jewelry, pottery, and weaponry. But it's their military strength that left the most lasting impression. The Thracian warriors, particularly the famed Thracian horsemen, were considered some of the fiercest fighters in the ancient world. The Thracians were so feared that even the Greeks sought their help in battle, and the Romans were wary of their powerful influence. However, despite their rich history, the Thracians never managed to form a lasting empire like the Greeks or Romans. Instead, they remained a loose confederation of tribes and kingdoms. This lack of unification, though, doesn't diminish their importance in history. Instead, it highlights their unique position as a civilization that shaped the course of European history without ever becoming a dominant empire. The identity of the Thracians was complex and multifaceted. While they are often thought of as a single, unified group, the Thracians were actually made up of many different tribes, each with their own customs, dialects, and traditions. Some Thracian tribes were known for their warrior culture, while others were more focused on trade and artistry. This diversity within the Thracian people is one of the reasons their genetic legacy is so interesting. The Thracians spoke a language that remains largely unclassified, with some scholars suggesting it was related to the Indo-European language family. Their language, now lost to history, may have influenced the languages of neighboring peoples, like the Greeks and the Illyrians. While the Thracian language itself is no longer spoken, traces of it can still be found in ancient inscriptions and place names throughout the Balkans. Their social structure was also diverse, with each tribe operating under a different system of governance. Some were ruled by powerful kings, like the famous Thracian king, Suits III, while others were governed by councils or tribal chiefs. This diversity of leadership and culture meant that Thracians often interacted with and influenced neighboring civilizations. They were not isolated, but rather part of a larger Mediterranean and Eastern world. In terms of genetics, this diversity is reflected in the populations of modern-day countries like Bulgaria, Greece, and Romania. These populations carry genetic markers that link them to the ancient Thracians, but also show signs of mixing with other groups over the centuries. The Thracians, like many ancient cultures, were not static. They absorbed influences from their neighbors and, in turn, left their genetic mark on the surrounding populations. This mixing of peoples and cultures is a testament to the Thracians' role as a bridge between East and West. Their ability to adapt and influence other cultures made them a key player in the ancient world, even if their own identity remains fragmented in the historical record. Today, modern genetic research is helping to piece together this lost identity, revealing the complex and interconnected nature of the Thracian people. The Thracian language is one of the great mysteries of ancient Europe. Unlike the Greek, Latin, or Hebrew languages that we can trace back through extensive written records, the Thracian language remains largely unknown. It is believed to be part of the Indo-European language family, but its exact relationship to other ancient languages is unclear. What little we know comes from inscriptions and references made by the Greeks and Romans. The Thracian language was not widely written down, and most of what we know about it comes from fragments inscribed on stone tablets, pottery, and coins. These inscriptions offer tantalizing glimpses into the language, but they are far from complete. The lack of surviving texts makes it difficult for linguists to fully reconstruct the language or understand its complexities. Some scholars believe that the Thracian language may have been closely related to the languages of the Illyrians or the Phrygians, but this remains speculative. The mystery of the Thracian language is significant because it limits our understanding of the Thracians themselves. Without a full understanding of their language, much of their history, mythology, and cultural practices remain obscured. However, genetic research is now shedding new light on this ancient civilization. By comparing ancient DNA with modern populations, scientists are beginning to uncover patterns that suggest the Thracians' influence on neighboring languages and cultures. Today, some linguists and archaeologists are working on decoding the fragments of the Thracian language, hoping to unlock more about their culture and history. While the language may never be fully reconstructed, its legacy lives on in the people who still carry the genetic markers of the Thracians. The language, though lost, continues to influence the modern world in ways we are only beginning to understand. One of the most telling aspects of Thracian culture is their burial practices. The Thracians were known for their elaborate tombs, which were filled with artifacts, weapons, and goods meant to accompany the dead into the afterlife. These tombs, often discovered in the Balkans, provide key insights into the Thracian way of life and, more importantly, their genetic legacy. The Thracians buried their dead with great care, and many tombs contained rich burial goods. Archaeologists have uncovered gold jewelry, pottery, and even chariots in the graves of Thracian nobles. The elaborate nature of these tombs suggests that the Thracians believed in an afterlife, and they wanted to ensure that their ancestors were well equipped for the journey. From a genetic perspective, these burial sites are invaluable. In recent years, scientists have extracted DNA from the remains found in Thracian tombs. This DNA has provided a unique look at the genetic makeup of the Thracians. By comparing ancient Thracian DNA with modern populations, researchers can trace the movement of Thracian genes across the Balkans and even into parts of Europe and Asia. These genetic clues offer a direct link between ancient Thracian burial practices and modern populations, helping to establish the Thracians' lasting influence on the genetic landscape of the region. Through these ancient graves, we are able to see the genetic continuity of the Thracian people. Many of the genetic markers found in Thracian remains are still present in modern populations of the Balkans today. This continuity is a powerful reminder that the Thracians, though long gone as a civilization, are still very much a part of the genetic fabric of modern Europe. One of the most exciting developments in our understanding of the Thracians has come from the field of ancient DNA analysis. For years, historians and archaeologists could only speculate about the genetic makeup of the Thracians based on their cultural artifacts and interactions with other civilizations. However, with the rise of genetic research, we can now directly examine the DNA of ancient Thracians and trace their genetic legacy across Europe. Ancient DNA is extracted from human remains found in burial sites, and it has revolutionized how we study ancient populations. In the case of the Thracians, DNA recovered from burial sites across the Balkans has provided groundbreaking insights into their genetic history. This research has revealed that the Thracians were genetically diverse, with influences from both the indigenous populations of the Balkans and from neighboring regions, such as the Mediterranean and even the Near East. One key finding of this genetic research is the evidence of genetic continuity between the ancient Thracians and modern-day populations in the Balkans. Many of the genetic markers found in Thracian remains are still present in contemporary populations, especially in countries like Bulgaria and Romania. This suggests that the Thracians' genetic legacy has been preserved through the centuries, passed down through generations, and integrated into the genetic makeup of modern Eastern Europeans. Moreover, the DNA analysis has shown that the Thracians were not isolated from the larger world. Their genetic makeup reveals evidence of contact and intermarriage with various other ancient peoples, including the Greeks, the Dacians, and even distant groups in Asia Minor. This genetic mixing is a testament to the Thracians' cosmopolitan nature and their strategic location at the crossroads of Europe and Asia. However, the full picture of Thracian genetics remains incomplete. While modern DNA analysis has uncovered much, there is still much to learn. As more ancient Thracian remains are discovered and analyzed, we may gain an even clearer understanding of their genetic history and how they fit into the broader tapestry of ancient European populations. The study of ancient DNA is helping to resurrect the genetic legacy of the Thracians, bringing to light their profound influence on the genetic landscape of modern Europe. As we continue to unravel these genetic secrets, we are not just learning about the Thracians themselves, but also how their DNA has shaped the people who live in the same regions today. The Thracians were not just passive inhabitants of the Balkans, they were active participants in the cultural, political, and military affairs of their time. Their interactions with neighboring civilizations, the Greeks, Romans, and Persians, left a lasting mark on the genetic and cultural makeup of the region. But how did the Thracians influence these other cultures, and how is this reflected in their genetic legacy? The Thracians were known for their warrior culture, and their skill in battle made them valuable allies and formidable foes. The Greeks often called upon the Thracians for military support, particularly during conflicts with the Persians. The Thracian mercenaries, known for their fierceness and discipline, were an important part of Greek and Persian armies. The Thracians even provided warriors for the famous Greek hoplite forces, and their reputation as fierce fighters spread throughout the Mediterranean world. In addition to their military prowess, the Thracians had significant cultural exchanges with the Greeks. Many Thracians adopted Greek customs, art styles, and even religious practices. Greek mythology and Thracian traditions often intertwined, with some Thracian kings being depicted as semi-divine figures in Greek art and literature. The Romans, too, had a complex relationship with the Thracians. After conquering the Thracian territories, the Romans incorporated much of Thracian culture into their own. They adopted Thracian military tactics and even some elements of their religious practices. The Thracian people, while eventually absorbed into the Roman Empire, continued to maintain their unique cultural identity in many ways. Genetic research has revealed that the Thracians' genetic influence can still be seen in modern populations throughout the Balkans. For example, genetic markers found in Thracian remains have been traced to contemporary populations in Bulgaria and Romania, suggesting that the Thracians' genetic legacy was passed on through generations. Additionally, the intermarriage between Thracians and other ancient cultures, such as the Greeks and Romans, further contributed to the genetic diversity of the region. The Thracians were not just a footnote in history, they were active agents in shaping the genetic and cultural development of the Balkans. Their interactions with neighboring civilizations helped to create a rich tapestry of shared influences, which can still be seen today in the genetic makeup of modern populations. The relationship between the Thracians and the Dacians, two closely related peoples of the ancient Balkans, is one of the key factors in understanding the genetic legacy of the Thracians. The Dacians, who lived in what is now Romania and parts of Moldova, were closely tied to the Thracians, both culturally and genetically. In fact, many scholars believe that the Dacians were simply another branch of the Thracian people, with similar customs, languages, and genetic traits. The Dacians and Thracians shared a common ancestry, and their genetic markers are often indistinguishable. This shared heritage is evident in the archaeological record, where similar burial practices, pottery styles, and art forms have been found in both Thracian and Dacian sites. The two groups also shared a similar social structure, with powerful tribal leaders and warrior elites. Despite their close ties, the Thracians and Dacians had distinct identities and lived in different regions of the Balkans. The Dacians, for instance, were known for their fortified hilltop settlements, which were often more isolated than the urban centers of the Thracians. However, both peoples were eventually absorbed into the Roman Empire, with the Dacians facing conquest by the Romans in the 1st century CE. Genetic studies have revealed that modern Romanians are closely related to the ancient Dacians and, by extension, to the Thracians. This shared ancestry is reflected in the genetic markers found in Romanian populations, which show a strong connection to the ancient peoples of the Balkans. In fact, some genetic traits commonly found in modern Romanians are thought to have been inherited from the ancient Thracians and Dacians. The genetic connection between the Thracians and Dacians highlights the lasting impact of these ancient peoples on the genetic landscape of the region. While the political and cultural distinctions between the Thracians and Dacians may have faded, their shared genetic heritage continues to resonate in the populations of modern-day Eastern Europe. The Thracian civilization, once a powerful force in the Balkans, began to decline around the 1st century BCE. This decline was primarily due to the expansion of the Roman Empire, which gradually absorbed Thracian territories into its fold. The Roman conquest of Thrace marked the end of the Thracian kingdom and the beginning of a new era in the region's history. While the Romans conquered the Thracians, they did not completely erase their culture or genetic legacy. Instead, the Thracians were gradually assimilated into Roman society, and many of their customs, language, and traditions were incorporated into the Roman way of life. The Thracians continued to live in the region under Roman rule, and their genetic legacy was woven into the fabric of the Roman Empire. One of the key factors in the survival of the Thracian genetic legacy was the fact that the Romans did not impose a strict policy of cultural assimilation. Instead, they allowed local populations to maintain many of their traditions and practices as long as they accepted Roman rule. This policy of integration, rather than eradication, allowed the Thracians' genetic markers to persist in the population. Over time, however, the distinct cultural identity of the Thracians began to fade. As the Roman Empire expanded and other cultures, such as the Slavs and the Byzantines, moved into the Balkans, the Thracians were gradually absorbed into these new populations. Despite this, the genetic legacy of the Thracians continues to be present in modern-day populations across the Balkans. The decline of the Thracian civilization may have marked the end of their political power, but their genetic legacy lives on. Through DNA analysis, we can trace the traces of their ancestry throughout the Balkans, ensuring that the Thracians are not forgotten, but rather remembered as an integral part of European history. Today, the genetic legacy of the Thracians is not just a historical curiosity, it is a living part of the genetic makeup of modern populations in the Balkans. Through advances in genetic research, scientists have been able to trace the presence of Thracian genetic markers in contemporary populations. These markers, passed down through generations, reveal a deep connection between the ancient Thracians and the people living in the region today. In countries like Bulgaria, Romania, Greece, and Turkey, genetic studies have shown that modern populations carry a significant amount of Thracian ancestry. This is especially true in areas that were once part of the ancient Thracian homeland. Genetic markers linked to the Thracians, such as certain Y-DNA haplogroups, can still be found in high frequencies in these populations. Moreover, the Thracians' genetic legacy is not confined to the Balkans. As their influence spread across Europe through trade, migration, and intermarriage, the genetic impact of the Thracians has been felt far beyond their original homeland. Today, people with Balkan ancestry in other parts of Europe may also carry traces of Thracian genes, further underscoring the lasting impact of this ancient civilization. The genetic legacy of the Thracians is a reminder of the interconnectedness of human history. While the Thracian civilization may have been forgotten by many, their genetic imprint endures in the people of Europe today. By studying ancient DNA, we are not only uncovering the genetic history of the Thracians, but also gaining insights into the broader genetic history of Europe. The Thracians may be a forgotten civilization, but their genetic legacy ensures that they are far from forgotten by the people of the Balkans and beyond. Through the lens of modern science, we can now appreciate the profound impact the Thracians had on shaping the genetic landscape of Europe, and we can carry their memory forward into the future.